So some of the techniques that are in this descent, I'll keep this short and sweet because in the previous video I go over these in quite a bit more detail. You're going to see a lot of drops, right? When I slow this down, I'll slow them down for quite a few of the drops. The first half especially has a lot of drops. That's the rockier part of the trail where there's sort of more step changes in the elevation of the trail as opposed to the second half, which is quite a bit smoother in terms of the elevation profile, even if it is actually quite a bit steeper, I think. Skip steps, these are occurring, again, largely after drops, hops, and jumps. So anytime there's a lot of momentum going forward and a lot of weight coming down, there's a need to put 2 feet on the ground, right? One after the other in rapid succession in order to avoid being off balance and putting too much force into one leg. Stutter steps. So this happens a lot in this video. It's kind of like it's the main technique of this whole video. So whenever I feel the trail and my speed taking me someplace I don't want to go, and this happens quite a bit on this trail because of the camber and the steepness of the slope that is to the left in the trail, like people have fallen down there and almost died. You know, if when they've not been as careful as they should have been, especially if you're going downhill as fast as I'm going, it's going to be bad news when you go tumbling down that ravine. So basically, when the rocks get like really dense and tricky, stutter stepping slows me down, buys me time, gives me more opportunity to assess the trail in front of me, and again avoids me going so fast that that if I do fall, I'm not going to be able to effectively catch myself on the way down. Um, Posts, this is relatively infrequent in this video, but again, those are used to quickly control direction and speed. And this here is mostly done to adjust my line and slightly reduce my speed. This kind of comes in. These sometimes blend in with stutter steps. What really characterizes a post is the fact that generally speaking, that's a lateral footstep where the direction change is really important, as opposed to the speed control, whereas a stutter step is much more about speed control in that respect. There are a few taps in this video. There's one big one at the end of the descent when I'm in the bed of the spillway, and I do the one drop after the other. There's a really sort of obvious tap there. But there are a few others in the video, and essentially they happen when I'm coming across a rock that I just don't want to either power off of or post on. It's just another way of ensuring that I stay balanced, and that I don't overcommit myself in any one direction. Rock hopping is a new one that wasn't in the previous video, going down North Burma. Here, it's one of the first things that you see in the video is when I go from one rock to the next. There's an opportunity to go to the third, but I'll talk about that in a second. Essentially, this is a lot of fun, first of all, and it happens a few times in the video. What I would say about it is that it sort of falls into the broader category of finding ayudantes, right? Finding helpers in Spanish. I take this from the book Born to Run with El Caballo Blanco, the white horse who ran feverishly and fiendishly in the trails of northern Mexico, and he had a lot of wisdom about how to run on trails efficiently. And one of the big things that he advocated in that book was finding the helpers, finding the rocks that are gonna be able to propel you forward, control your speed, and so forth. Ones that are appropriate for the context that you need, because there are definitely rocks that are not helpful, that don't have an appropriate surface or slope or position in the trail. And this again just takes time to sort of assess and come to an understanding of which rocks are going to help you win. The biggest thing that I want people to pay attention to in this next part when I slow things down, there are some long stretches that I slow down a lot, and I slow it down by quite a bit to like 25% speed for a long portion of the trail, especially the first half, is because I want you to focus on foot placement, okay? This is like real estate in a way. It's location, 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 all right? It's like the single most fundamental important thing that you do when you're running to begin with, and trail running in particular, is where you're putting your feet, right? And with technical downhill, it's even more important. All of the stuff about being able to scan and see the trail and picking your line and stutter step, like all that stuff requires you to have a good sense of where you're putting your feet, and it's there to serve you in deciding where to put your feet. So it's absolutely critical to put your feet in the right place. And this is a game of inches, okay? Like tiny little mistakes of 1 inch or less can lead to tremendous pain and suffering, okay? And making the right decision in a matter of inches can really save you and really help you figure out put you in the place where you want to be on the trail. It's not just about where you put your foot, but also which part of your foot you put down, right? The most obvious thing is you wouldn't want to put your heel where you meant to put the ball of your foot. That would be stupid. That would be really painful potentially. That would cause you to slip. Because if you look at your foot like a fulcrum, the heel is sort of the back end on one end of the seesaw, and the ball of your foot is at the other end of the seesaw, right? And so your arch being that fulcrum point. And so if you had the intention of putting the ball of your foot there, but you put you put your heel there, that's going to create, like, the physics are just not going to be what you anticipated, and that's going to cause you some problems. At the end of this video, I'm going to highlight where I screw this up, where I put the wrong part of my foot. My foot placement is off by a little bit. The foot strike was correct. I put the part of my foot on the ground that I wanted to, but It was just not in the right place. And the reason, I'll get to that why, but basically this can happen for any number of reasons. Almost always it's because you're going too fast and you've got too much momentum and you can't get your foot down in time to put it in the right place without losing balance before, at that point. Once the foot goes down in the wrong place, then it's about maintaining balance given the new forces that you weren't anticipating moving through your body. Finally, the most important thing with respect to not falling here on a trail like this, sort of underlying all of this is good mechanics. Okay, you've got quick turnover, which is epitomized by the stutter step, right? You have high heel return, and what this basically means is bringing your heel to your butt. Okay, it means that on each stride, once your foot hits the ground, you are getting your foot out of the way. Okay, and this is going to help you prevent like clipping your toe and going face first, right, into the trail. So getting your heel to your butt is critical here, and then getting your knee really high up. This is going to give you a lot of it's also going to prevent you from clipping your toe, but B, it's also going to give you lots of opportunity and time to sort of think of where you want to put your foot. Right? The higher your foot is, the higher your knee is, the higher your foot is off the ground, the more room it has to move, like literally, the more space between it and the ground. And a key part of this, especially when you're going down trails like this where they're really big rocks, like you really need to be able to get your foot high enough to clear the rock that's a foot or a foot and a half tall. Okay. And it's also going to give you an opportunity to put your foot up on a rock that's a foot or a foot and a half tall, right? And so when you think about the mechanics of like a good stride, right? Like good sprint speed is defined by quick feet, so getting your feet down as quickly as possible once you've gotten once you've started your stride. Once you've hit the ground, getting your heel to your butt as quickly as possible, and then driving your knee high, right, to essentially start the next stride. So those are like the three primary components of good sprinting form and good sprinting technique and mechanics, and it holds here too. And in general, it holds with good trail running. When you see people shuffling and stuff like that, they're not bringing their knees up or their heels aren't getting very high. That's okay, I guess, if you're doing like a road marathon, but for something like this, it's really not an appropriate stride. So in any case, that's my overview of this video, some of the techniques, and I'm going to narrate over it here in a little bit. But again, thinking very much about foot placement. So as this video goes and I narrate, like foot placement is going to be something that I really emphasize throughout this video, because I think it's a really important piece of doing this safely and effectively. And if you pay attention to it, you can really start to see some of the nuance and the subtleties, and frankly, some of the skill, right, involved in this activity. So with that said, let's roll into it and see how it is. All right, so it starts off pretty straightforward. I'm not slowing this part down yet, but here we go. So this section here, nice little jump, okay, over the rock, 1-2 landing, right in line with the stride, little bit of meander across the trail, and here is the rock hopping. Okay, and I wanted to go to that one, but I wasn't sure about its surface. Wasn't sure if it was an ayudante or not, and so I didn't go 1-2-3. I just went 1-2 on it. This next part, again, just pay attention to the foot placement. Okay, there's not a lot of stuff going on here, but it gets more technical right around now. Okay, so a lot of questions. Okay, ayudante, right? Like helper rocks, okay, and just that was another one right there, putting it down on rocks, okay. And one of the rules that people will tell you is never put your foot right down in front of a rock, because you never know. you might clip your toe. Well, if you've got good heel return and good knee drive, you don't have to worry about that. Here's another 1-2. Ayudante right there on the way down. Okay. And the rest, like, just, again, foot placement all day, right? And you have to be able to read the rocks. Avoiding a pothole there, running up on this little ridge, okay? And shorten my stride right there. I could have gone a lot farther. Didn't, okay? Really punchy strides, okay? The knee comes up, the foot comes straight down. Really punchy strides, okay? And that's the sort of end of that technical piece. And this gets kind of boring there. And then it gets good again. So a drop, okay? Recovering. Notice how that took me to the left of the trail. The camber took me to the left, and I have to recover it and come back to the right, okay, before I keep going down this more technical section. Again, I'm on a little bit of a ridge here. You see me stutter step, okay, boom, come up over that rock, right? And from here, I continue to ride that ridge, do a little bit of a drop. You can see how the trail, there's like kind of like two main lines. Another drop. And the mountain bikers tend to take the smoothest lower line, okay? Like, here we go, stutter stepping through this rock field. And another, and again, the foot placement. Just pay really close attention to the foot placement. And notice that I am breaking that rule. I'm putting my feet right in front of rocks, okay? It happens again and again in the video, and the reason that I can do that, right there's another good example. The reason I can do that is because I have good heel return and my knee drive is high, right? So I'm aware of where my foot is in space. Another example, okay, clearing that rock, right? Doing a lot of sort of like skipping down the hill, you know, not quite drops, okay? They're not quite big enough to be full drops. But I am allowing myself, that was a bit of a tap there with the left foot as I cleared that rock. I am allowing myself to be carried down the hill and to pitter patter as I do, the 1-2, okay? So there's a nice big drop there, and we speed things up again. This just gives you a sense of how fast, like, I'm actually running, even though this, you know, it's a quarter speed or whatever. You can see that little bit of a skip there. A lot of technical, like, pitter-pattering again with the feet, stutter stepping, while I'm also trying to weave in and out of rocks, avoid big ones, you know. Here I take a banked turn. There's some people on the left there. There's a big banked turn that the mountain bikers have created. And right there. So that gets interesting. So we're going to slow this down and we're going to go back and take another look at that. So the mountain bikers have created this really big bank turn, and it's going to shoot you down like you're almost going to go off the trail. So I have to stutter step pretty hard to avoid going off the trail. I get back into the midline of the trail, and there's still some technical work. And here, slow down again even more. Watch what my knees do. See how my knees come out to the side? See how high I'm driving my knees, right? When you take your knees out to the side like that, it's yet another way of slowing you down, of shortening your stride, and it engages your glutes much more when you flare your knees out, right? So the rest of this you'll see is sort of at regular speed for a good bit of this. And again, it's to give you a sense, like, there's not a lot of technical stuff happening on this trail. And so you can get going really fast because this is a really steep part of the trail. But there are still rocks that you need to be aware of. And so, like, the stutter stepping is still happening really frequently throughout this, okay? And using that to pick lines and move laterally across the trail throughout. So here's the creek bed. Okay, I'm going to show it at full speed first. Drop, drop, tap, and then we're on our way. But let's watch what really happens here. Okay, so yes, there's a good solid first drop, right? 10% speed, and then right here, that you can see my foot does not land in the dirt where I wanted it. I have to overcompensate. That right arm swings really hard. I drive super hard off the left foot, tap with the right, and now I'm back. Now I'm back in balance. Now I'm on a straight line with the trail, okay, and it was all because I had to do all that work just because that left toe, my left big toe, landed on that rock incorrectly, right, just by like an inch. And then, right, of course, who could forget? After about 4 minutes of cruising, a little hop at the end, just to round it out. All right, so now that you've seen all that, I think I should just go over sort of like why the hell am I doing this, right? What is the purpose of all this? This looks dangerous, certainly looks fun, but what's the point, right? And what I would analogize it to climbing, right? So technical downhill is to trail running as bouldering is to rock climbing, right? It's a skill building exercise, but it's also fun in its own right. Bouldering is its own sport. Rock climbing, lead climbing, and so forth. That is obviously also its own sport, its own activity. But the main function of bouldering, at least initially, was to practice skills, to practice like really punchy technical skills that you couldn't develop on the side of a mountain very well because of how tired you were and the stakes in play. So this is kind of similar, right? Like you do a tough, hard technical downhill section at the end or the middle or whatever, some portion of a run that isn't that long and where you're not that tired, and where like this is kind of the main reason that you're doing this route or this run is so you can get this technical downhill training in. I don't always run trails that are this technical and certainly not this fast, right? When I'm going down a trail, when it is this technical, this is like for special, purposeful training runs. Okay. And but when I do run these kinds of technical downhill trails, I focus on them, right? This is the reason I went on this run today, was to get out there and run run Spring Creek Trail downhill and fast, right? That was the goal of the day's run. And it's overall part of a balanced running regime. It's part of a balanced training regime, part of a balanced diet where you're not doing something this taxing or this intense or this dangerous every day that I go out and run. I'm doing it once or twice a week to stay sharp, right? Because you're never gonna, like, I would never pick these lines in a race. Okay, like the lines you're seeing me run are not lines that I would pick if I had to get down the mountain as fast as I could. Okay, like if I was really in a race, right? Whether that's an ultra, a marathon, a half marathon, a 10K, 5K, like I am not picking these lines because these lines are not the fastest lines. Okay, there are much faster lines down both of the trails that you've seen so far on my channel, and they're and they avoid the technical parts, right? Where basically what you would see is just a lot of stutter stepping to control speed on basically smooth surface with good contours and so forth, right? Like I'm not going to pick these crazy big rocky sections to go ham on. It's just not something I'm going to do in a race. But the thing is that in a race, when you're going for speed, right, like things happen, especially if you've got other people on the trail with you and you need to avoid them or you're throwing elbows or whatever, right, jostling around. Like cross country races can get kind of physical. And as a result, right, like you might end up on a line that you don't want to be on. And in that case, you're going to have these kinds of skills to stay safe and, still be competitive in the race, right? So I think especially, even if you're on just a group run and you're not paying attention to the trail because you're jawing with your friends, you're having a good time, and all of a sudden, oh crap, I wasn't paying attention, and now there's this section that's really technical, and what's his name over there has got the good line, and I'm stuck here on the shitty line. What do I do? Well, you don't just stop and like get on the other line. If you've got some of these skills, you can just power through it and keep going. So basically, the point here is that this what I'm showing you is practice, right? It's training. It's like a skills building exercise. It's not something that I would do in a race, but in a race or even on a regular run, like having these skills sharp is an important piece of being an all around effective trail runner, right? And the last thing I would say, right, is about this is that when you're going to do these kinds of technical downhill sections as part of your training, like you really do want to focus on them. They should be the primary focus of the run, right? Like the run I was on when I did this section was only 5.5 miles, okay, and it was focused pretty much exclusively on this. This was the most important piece of it. And the reason for that is that you don't want to do this stuff sloppy. You don't want to do this stuff at the end of a 15 miler and say when you're tired and your hip flexors are weaker and your feet are a little sore or whatever. Like you don't want to do this tired, okay? Because you're gonna make mistakes, and even if you don't get hurt, you're just not gonna be doing things right. You're just not gonna be doing things correctly. And the thing is that practice does not make perfect. Okay, perfect practice makes perfect. It's one of the most important things my Taekwondo instructor taught me when I was a kid. If you want to learn how to do something right, if you want to get the habits correct and you want to be able to do things perfectly, you have to practice perfectly. Okay, you have to be focused on exactly what you're doing and why, and you have to execute. And so when you're tired and when you're not on 100%. You're not going to be practicing perfectly. So this is just guess a little bit of a PSA with respect to when you ought to think about doing this and why. It is just a skills-based exercise. It is not something that you would do, in a race. And when you do it, you definitely want to be on and you want to be doing it right. Right? Because you want those good habits, those good skills to be there for you when you really need them. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching the video. Really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, whatever the hell you want to do. Don't really care. I enjoy doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it whether you want me to or not. Have a good one, y'all.